forces restate loyalty to civilian government, denies receiving any request for undemocratic change of government.
ECOWAS Parliament constitute team to engage military junta in Niger Republic as Nigerian Islamic clerics encourage dialogue.
NDLEA records more breakthrough as major drug syndicates are dislodged in 5 states.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall be taking a look at reforming Nigeria's tax system.
In his inaugural speech on May 29th this year, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made a commitment to review the Nigerian economy and put it on the path of growth and productivity. One key area he indicated desire to immediately transform is taxation, which is very central to the prosperity of most nations. The president said he was aware of the challenges relating to tax administration in Nigeria, which clearly shows that Nigeria is not doing well compared to other economies of its size.
That's right, Jumei. Of course, the president did not waste time in matching words with action. Shortly after, the president constituted the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, which was inaugurated last week. The 38-member committee, which has Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, a tax and fiscal policy expert, as chairman, comprises of experts from both the private and public sectors. Prior to that time, the president had signed 4 executive orders, including the suspension of the 5% excise tax on telecom services, as well as excise duties escalation on locally manufactured products.
Now, the Tax Reform Committee, according to the President, would be responsible for various aspects of tax law reforms, fiscal policy design and coordination, harmonization of taxes and revenue administration. Now, its primary objective is to enhance revenue collection efficiency, ensure transparent reporting and promote the effective utilization of tax and other revenues to boost citizens' tax morale, foster a healthy tax culture and drive voluntary compliance.
Certainly, the importance of a sound fiscal policy environment and an effective taxation system for the government and the economy cannot be overstated. Unfortunately, Nigeria ranks very low on the global ease of paying taxes, where the country's tax to GDP ratio is said to be one of the lowest in the world and way below the African average.
Well, this is a fact, Kieran, because tax payment in Nigeria is still an uphill tax. Experts say there are so many people that are outside the tax net, particularly the rich and powerful, who either evade payment or underpay. Even within the low tax-paying population, there are challenges with getting all the tax into the basket. The situation is worsened by duplicity, corruption, and saturation of small businesses who cry out at of being choked by overtaxation.
Jimmy, getting Nigeria into the tax net has been a very daunting tax for so many years, and of course the challenge is still very much on, and that has resulted in over-reliance on borrowing to finance public spending, which in turn limits the fiscal space, as debt service costs consume a greater portion of government revenue, resulting in a vicious cycle of inadequate funding for economic development annually. Nigerians recall that in the last couple of years, government has struggled to meet basic obligations because of the inability of the nation's major revenue earner, the NNPC, to remit money into the federation account.
And before the removal of subsidy, the FIRS became the major source of funds into the Federation account, which the 3 tiers of government relied upon to share during their monthly FAC meetings. Indeed, many have given credit to the FIRS, which recorded substantial improvement in revenue collection in recent times. The FIRS has deployed various platforms to incentivize tax payment and make the hitherto cumbersome process less stressful.
As they say, there is a new sheriff in town, in the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is said to have a record of improving tax collection during his tenure as governor of Lagos State. Will he replicate this record at the national scale? How would this committee work with the other tiers of government? There are issues that will require legislative amendments to subsisting tax laws. Is there likely to be conflict between the committee and other revenue generating agencies? And that's very, very likely.
Yeah, very important and pertinent questions there, Kirian. And many Nigerians may also be asking whether this new tax direction will mean more taxation at a time when they are struggling to stay afloat. All these are issues we shall be digging into today on Good Morning Nigeria as we discuss reforming Nigeria's tax system. We're live on the network service of the NTA. I am Jummai Yusuf.
And I am Kirian Umaya. We welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And of course, we are reaching you live on the network service of the NTA from our Abuja studios. As always, we have other segments that will make today's package very thick. And they include business news, sports, foreign news, and of course newspaper review. For now, let's engage Olajide Bello, who has the morning news to deliver. You're welcome, Olajide.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kirian. Good morning, Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. And here is the news. The ECOWAS Parliament has formed a mediation team to visit Niger Republic and address the crisis resulting from the recent coup d'etat and detention of the ex-president Mohamed Bazoum. The decision was made during the 2023 first virtual extraordinary session held on the 11th to 12th August, coordinated from the Abuja ECOWAS Parliament. Secretary General of the ECOWAS Parliament presented the Niger situation report, which focused on the response of the heads of state and pertinent ECOWAS measures. First Deputy Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, Idris Wasa, says the committee will consult with the chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, before heading to Niger Republic. The Speaker of the Parliament, Sidi Mohamed Tunis, directed the committee to engage in dialogue with the ECOWAS Authority Chairman and formulate mediation strategies within the next 2 days. Meanwhile, Nigeria's intervention team, comprising prominent Islamic scholars in the country, approved by President Bola Tinubu a few days ago, have met with the coup leaders in Niger Republic, where both parties agreed to intensify the option of dialogue in resolving the political crisis in that country. The team, led by Sheikh Abdullahi Balalau, met with General Abdurrahman Chiani for several hours in Niamey, during which they deliberated on issues including the demand by ECOWAS leaders that President Bazoum be reinstated. In a statement, Sheikh Balalau says the team had told President Tinubu that their position is that the political impasse in Niger be resolved through dialogue, and the visit to Niger was to encourage him and other military leaders behind the coup to the path of peace. General Tiani says their doors are open to explore diplomacy, adding that it is painful that ECOWAS leaders did not hear their side of the matter before issuing an ultimatum to quit office. He hinted that they struck to avert an imminent threat that would have affected not only Niger Republic but Nigeria as well. The Defense Headquarters has reacted to a false report alleging that the armed forces of Nigeria received a request to effect change of leadership of the country. In a statement, Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General Tukur Gusau, says that the armed forces never received nor made such a declaration at any time to anyone or group. The Defense Headquarters says the military is comfortable with democracy and remains loyal to the President and civilian administration. The statement adds that the armed forces will continue to defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Nigerian Air Force aircraft have continued to destroy criminal elements operating in various parts of the country. NAV Director, Public Relations and Information, Air Commander Edward Gabuet, says in the Niger Delta region, airstrikes under Operation Delta Safe targeted an illegal refining site situated in southwest of Bele, a coastal town in Degema, local Gama area of River State. Airstrikes were also extended to an IPOB camp in Ihiala local government area of Anambra State, following intelligence where IPOB elements were planning an impending attack on innocent citizens. Similar airstrikes were also carried out by the air component of Operation Hadinkai at a location about 1.5 kilometers east of Arania Sambisa Forest. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has carried out intelligence-led operations in Lagos and 4 other states, leading to the arrest of a drug baroness and 4 kingpins. The agency recovered large amounts of tramadol, cocaine, and skunk. The suspected syndicates were involved in various drug-related activities, including distribution and production. Meanwhile, the operations also resulted in the confiscation of substantial quantities of illicit substances and the arrest of several individuals involved in the legal drug trade. And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Jumai and Kirian after this break.
Fort Amadu reports that Nigeria is aiming at improving her cocoa earnings as the government takes measures to increase its production and storage system in the country.
The advent of climate change at this point in time has added another factor that has negatively contributed to the challenge of our farmers due to low adaptive capacity.
Redoubling its efforts to increase her foreign exchange earnings from cocoa export from 122 billion naira to about 240 billion naira in 2023. The federal government is also looking to top the chart of local production for value additions. Key players are the National Workshop on Pesticides Usage in Cocoa and Environment posits that cocoa contributed about 41% to the nation's export in 2022, making it the top agricultural export produce in the country, and insists that the sector can achieve its target of generating more revenue if it overcomes the challenge of poor production and storage system.
In Nigeria, what we are doing is to ensure that we support especially cocoa farmers on good agronomy practice.
So they need to strengthen it, they need to give it more attention, and they need to give it more funding and try as much as they can to expand. You know, now the market has opened up 54 countries, 170 borders, and we have about 33 of those companies are under least developed countries. So they need to look at targeted areas, which is our closest market, which market can we conquer in a very short while.
There are also sustained efforts to improve the production of shea butter for export, as Nigeria receives certification for shea collection in the wild from the European Union and the United States.
Instead of using leather sacks, we're using jute sacks now, so that we don't pollute the environment and thereby constitute more problem to the way the shea will grow or what yield it will give us.
Data indicates that Nigeria is one of the leading top producers of shea butter in the world and the host of more than 51% of shea trees along the shea belt. With Business News, Comfort Amodu.
Thank you, Comfort. We appreciate that package. Next is a review of today's national dailies.
Newspaper reviewer Chukudi is seated in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Juma. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Rainy weekend.
It's still chilling.
Yeah.
Still chilling. I'm afraid of cold conditions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm enjoying the weather.
You enjoy the weather?
It's one of the best.
I slept yesterday. I slept and I was even like, come on, wake up. You can't sleep throughout the day.
Sometimes it happens.
Beautiful weather.
Human system.
Yes.
You know, you could actually store up tiredness.
Yeah.
Don't sleep it out. It keeps haunting you.
Exactly.
We have different chemistry layout.
You're right.
All right. Now, let's go to the papers we have this morning. We have about 3 to review, plus, of course, the ones that Chukudi may have to bring in from other dailies we don't have here. Now, this Nigeria, that's the newspaper I have right now, this Nigeria. Now, the lead story there says, border closure, agri traders lose 13 billion naira revenue weekly. Arewa Economic Forum laments as CBN moves against banks engaged in illegal forex sales. All that on page 20. NAF airstrikes hit oil thieves and terrorists. It's on page 5. Don't take my calmness for granted. Fubara warns Obama stakeholders. Now, NDLEA seizes 13 tons of drug in 4 states. Of course, we showed you that during the news segment. It's on page 23 on this Nigerian newspaper. At the bottom, Niger coup leader Chiani agrees to dialogue with ECOWAS. Use of force on Niger coupists an option, but not viable, according to experts. Now, that will be all on this Nigeria. Now, let's turn to Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard newspaper, above the name flag, fresh fuel price hike looms as landing cost rises by 37.4%. While I was retired as PAMSEC at 48, Oyegu, that's the ex-APC chairman, all that on page 10. NJC denies ceding powers on judges' appointment, promotions to governors. All right, so it's on page 4. This is a lingering issue in this country. Now, the lead story on the Vanguard, we struck to avert threat against Nigeria and Niger, that's according to General Chiani. Several writers to that says coup well intended, explains why they didn't see Tinubu's delegation led by General Abdul Salami OK's dialogue as he meets Nigerian Islamic clerics, fight corruption, insecurity, not Niger Republic. Catholic bishops tell federal government. Prioritize dialogue, diplomacy will be urges federal government and ECOWAS. All right, you get all that on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Now, Shaibu manipulated NYCN election for Edo governorship ambition, according to Obaseki. That's on page 12. Now, supporter, well, of course, the photo story you see there, you can see a mammoth crowd there. That's the supporters cheer at concert for Niger's coupists. This is taking another dimension altogether. All right. Now, below that, subsidy removal. Kill corruption, not Nigerians. Bakare tells Tinubu, he's on page 26. We never received any coup request, says Military High Command, he's on page 9. Serap sues Abibio Abbas over plans to spend 110 billion naira on exotic cars and others. You get all the gist on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. Of course, Budapest 2023, Toby Amusan's fate hangs in the balance. That's on page 31. That's on sports now. Okay.
Let's quickly go to the Nation newspaper, and above the masthead, CBN liabilities may worsen forex volatility. With a rider DMO, it is not federal government loan. Find details on page 28. North Central Governor's Mall platform to tackle insecurity orders. Details on page 28. Seplat to end gas flaring by last quarter of 2024. Details on page 13. Banks stopped from writing off loans granted directors. Find details on page 28. Just below the masthead, stakeholders Otudeku behind court order stopping FBM AGM. You find the details on page 28. Reduce salt intake by 30%, says NAFDAC. Details on page 6. NJC still in charge of CGS appointments. Find that on page 6 too. And the headlines in the Nation newspaper: Nigeria junta leader now ready for Niger junta leader now ready for dialogue with ECOWAS. Chiani soft pedals at meeting with Islamic leaders on intervention mission. And the coup leader is begging for snubbing Abdul Salami Abubakar and the Sultan of Sokoto. At the bottom plate of the Nation newspaper, Nigeria records first minimally invasive heart surgery. That's good news. You find the details on page 30. Chukudi.
Thank you, Jumai. Now, the coupists in the army are saying they struck to avert threat against Niger. No, that's General Chani speaking on their behalf. And it starts this way: leader of the military junta in Republic of Niger, General Abdurrahmani Chani, said weekend that the coup in which they overthrew President Mohamed Bazoum was well intended and was carried out to avert an imminent threat that would have affected not only Niger Republic but also Nigeria. I've read through the story. He didn't explain the imminent threat at all. It's just the top line. It affects. He didn't explain how they averted an imminent threat. Well, let me say that what I can get from what he's talking about now is that they are ready for dialogue.
Yes.
You know, when people talk and talk and talk, social media sometimes
overheats,
abuses the intellect. You know, you hear people say it doesn't concern Nigeria. It doesn't. Are you saying that it is now right for people to be ruled by people they have not voted for? That is the question. Don't try to confuse me. You can't. No. It's not Nigeria's business. It's not this, it's not that. Who says it couldn't bring a ripple effect into Nigeria? Look at now. The military high command is saying something. We never received any coup request, says military high command. Imagine that kind of talk happening here. These are domino effects coming from what has happened there. So the earlier we nip it in the bud, the better for us. I knew that no shooting war is going to result from this. Come on, our brothers share boundaries with Niger, up there in the north. Are you saying that when a war starts, you're not going to feel it?
It's not just boundaries.
They
share family,
kith and kin.
Culture,
so we are not stupid. But there was need to exercise or exert rather maximum pressure on the junta. Please leave the diplomats to handle matters. This situation where talk has become free for all. Anybody joins talk and it debases human thinking. I am happy now that they say they are ready for dialogue. They are even apologizing for snubbing Abdul Salam and the other important Nigerian we sent there. Why would you do it in the first place? We knew that eventually they will begin to listen to ECOWAS. For me, it's a question of how long will it take before democracy is restored. I don't know whether Mohamed Bazoum is going to return. They are going to trade off a few things from both sides. But let democracy return to Niger. Let people choose those who will lead them. And I ask again, apart from the dreams of Thomas Sankara, which Blaise Compaoré did not allow materialize, which coup, which military regime has profited Africa? Let one person raise their hand and tell me which. We have to move forward. Whether the West and Russia are shadow boxing in the background, well, that's their headache. Africa should be sensible enough not to allow itself to become a staging point.
In a proxy war.
No, that's an entirely different kettle of tea. So I think we should be careful what we say. Social media is abusing so many things. You get to listen to talk that should not happen at all. Imagine our own military high command saying we never received any request. That should not even happen at all.
Yeah, exactly.
This should be handled by internal memo. We don't want to know that. Isn't there a hierarchy for reporting such things?
Nigeria needs to take a stand.
You want to exonerate yourself publicly so that the president or the Senate doesn't know? I don't think it helps quality talk, I don't think so.
Yeah, in as much as I support what you're saying, with emphasis as well. You see, living life, in an organized geographical entity is very difficult, and there are diverse interests, and what have you. Economy, for instance, the man said something, which perhaps he did not elucidate further, to say, look, that they averted a threat that could have affected Niger and Nigeria, which he didn't elaborate on, and so on.
No,
you and I wouldn't know, because the military people have intelligence report. I'm not saying he was right or something, but I'm looking at the economic aspect of what they did. I think the whole thing is towards economy, especially in those francophone countries. If you listen to the man they now call the youngest president in the world, the Burkina Faso, military leader, he made some comments, and he said, look, if Russia or France or America want uranium, they should come and build the facility in Niger. If they want other items, so he mentioned so many, solid minerals and other minerals in Africa, they should come and build the facility for the, what do you call it, a value chain, development, and pay for it, and not to come and take the raw material, go and develop it up there, and return them here for you to buy. So the guys are making economic sense. I'm not saying that military is an option. It's not an option at all. They should have looked for ways, or diplomatic ways of getting it done. But military people don't have diplomacy in the dictionary. That's the point. So they just struck, believing in those things they believe in, and we are focusing on Niger because they are close to us so much. What about Mali? What about Burkina Faso? What about Guinea-Conakry? These are all in the West African sub-region. That's what we're talking about. So it's a ripple effect of what happened there. Remember what we had the Arab Spring, from Tunisia to all Egypt, Arab nations and so on. So we should try to avert it, as rightly pointed out.
Yes, and just recently Burkina Faso suspended a radio station over criticism on Niger, and just like Chukwudi is talking about, our social media is going overboard at times with the kind of output we get on the social media. It's so disheartening when you open the social media at times and you're disgusted by what is there. The fights, the insults, it's so disgusting actually.
The thing is, I was talking with a retired admiral yesterday, and he said, Chukwudi, when we were in primary school, there were things that we just could not say or do. Why is it that everybody's just talking anyhow these days? Eventually I blame parents. Right?
It's because they hide behind social media names and platforms.
At the end of the day, don't Japanese have social media? Don't Chinese people have social media? I think it's parents. Because people will tell you, it's the internet that has spoiled Nigerian children. The internet data is cheaper, in Japan than in Nigeria. What are we talking? Parents abdicated their responsibilities. My dear brother, there are things you vouch for your children not to do, even as you are here in NTA studios, because you know whom your children are. If 3/4 of parents could say no, my son couldn't possibly have been part of that insurrection. Whatever upheaval is somewhere. Parents abdicated their responsibility in Africa, in Nigeria. So let's stop. You are very right, Chukwudi. We are the knowledge era, really. The internet is for good, but some persons, like you said, have turned it into exactly.
But we parents, yes, we blame parents, yes, very, very seriously. And again, the system as well. There's no regulation of the use of internet in Nigeria
at all.
And elsewhere, there's regulation. There are things you don't put out, via the internet because you have access to
we're being told to round up. What of a situation where PhD holders, masters holders are spreading sharing one nonsense?
Exactly.
There was a time 200 Christians were being burnt in India for more than 7 years, and people were still.
Chukwudi, look, we have to let you go. Thank you so much for coming. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Don't go away.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We're glad you're still with us up to this moment. Now, to give us a background for our conversation this morning, reforming Nigeria's tax system, let's now take this report put together by Abdusalam Jubril.
Globally, tax remittance is a mandatory requirement which constitutes a significant source of revenue generation to governments. While its application differs from country to country, the benefits of tax generally include providing sustainable finance and funding for governance, public and social services, and economic development. It also promotes civic responsibility and patriotism, among others. In some societies where tax culture has been deepened, there is a saying that nothing is certain except debt and taxes. However, countries like Nigeria are still having challenges in tax administration due to poor collection, tax evasion, underpayment, corruption, and duplication by government agencies. While several efforts have been made to reform taxation in the country, the situation is yet to be fully rectified, as there is said to be so much money outside the tax basket. To address and improve the situation, President Bola Tinubu made clear his determination to reinvigorate Nigeria's tax system, which suffers from high levels of evasion, collection inefficiency, among others. President Tinubu, while constituting the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, said he wants to boost Nigeria's tax to gross domestic product GDP ratio to at least 18% in 3 years. The government hopes that when this is achieved, it will reduce reliance on borrowing to finance public spending and remove barriers to business growth. The Tax Reform Committee is expected to focus on 3-point agenda, namely fiscal governance, tax reform, and growth facilitation. Analysts commend the president's push, stressing that the committee will find lasting solutions to the activities of over 62 government agencies over their mandates on tax remittance to government. Will the committee achieve its desired target and avoid the pitfalls of others before it? What are the areas that the committee needs to focus on in the immediate, medium, and long term? How will this committee work with other tiers of government at the subnational level? How will this new tax administration impact on the lives of the citizens? Guests will be speaking to these and more questions on the program shortly.
Thank you, Abdul Salam. And to discuss the topic, reforming Nigeria's tax system, let's welcome to our studio Mr. Sunday Oku, Director Tax Policy Department, Federal Inland Revenue Service. Glad to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, madam. Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
And we also have a regular in our studio, Dr. Kennedy Nwodu, Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. All right, and joining us from our Kano studio, we have Sheikh Kamal Al-Khali, former Assistant Director, FIRS. We are glad to have you join us this morning.
I'm grateful.
All right, well, we hope to link up with Tajuddin Adebuega Konde, the country managing partner CEO of PKF Professional Services Nigeria, who will be joining us via Zoom very much later. Thank you for joining us once again. Jumei.
Okay, let's begin with Mr. Sunday. The tax reform the president has, initiated has raised a lot of concerns and, issues across Nigerians. Some people are happy that it is now time for the country to evolve and generate revenue for itself, not just waiting for NNPC to put money into the federation account and then the states will share. Let's have your views on this policy that the president has, because whenever I hear the president say we will take our country back, I used to wonder why he said that, but later on as I continue to research into the reason why he says that is because there's so much rot in the system in taxation. So let's have your take on how it can improve revenue generation for the country.
Okay, thank you, madam, and good morning once again, viewers. Greetings from the Federal Land Revenue Service. We are happy to be here. Over time, people who follow our economy will realize that the government has been borrowing to fund the government, to fund the budget. And that happens when domestic revenue is insufficient for the purposes of providing infrastructure and other activities that our government are expected to provide for the citizenry. So the next thing you do is to go and borrow. But what the present government is trying to do is to reverse that and to say, if we look inward, we have the potentials to generate much more revenue that will be more sustaining than what we are currently generating. So the president came up with the idea that let us reform the tax system. When you talk of reform, you want to make something better. And I believe if we look critically at every sector of the Nigerian economy, there is no sector that we cannot improve upon, that we cannot make better. So the idea is, let's look at the economy, let's look at the revenue and be able to bring it up, generate more than what we have been generating, such that if we have to go borrowing at all, it is going to be very minimal at the very least. So funding of government services, funding of government or of infrastructure will therefore be done with resources that have been generated in-house. So in terms of my own perception, to me, I think any opportunity to do what we have been doing, to do it better, it should be appreciated. I see it as a welcome development. But you know, when there is a policy, there are usually two sides to it. Some people will applaud such policy, while some will have one or two things to say about it. So I believe those who are not looking at the policy as a good one will soon have a rethink when we have a more robust revenue profile for the country. So that would be my initial intro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I know that FIRS has been commended in the past, for a kind of a revolution, in our tax regime. I was privileged to watch FIRS grow under Ifweko, who introduced so many reforms in FIRS, and the Nigerians are beginning to enjoy the impact of that move, which was in the right direction. Now, but talking about taxes and the reason for reform, that is the reason for reform. So all is not well in that sector. And let's bring in Dr. Kennedy Iwondo, who is the chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District. Now, give us a picture of what really went wrong, or what is wrong that the president wants to reform. Let's our viewers have also a clear understanding of what it was, before the president took the action, he took initial action he took to see how a tax regime in the country can be harmonized and reformed for better administration. So let's know your view concerning that.
Okay, thank you. If you look globally, OECD tax to GDP ratio is averaging 34%. Come home in Africa, tax to GDP ratio in Africa is averaging 17%, while Nigeria is at the level of 11%. You can see that all is not well. Let me repeat it again. OECD tax to GDP ratio is at the average of 34% globally. Then in Africa, tax to GDP ratio averages between 16-17%. While Nigeria currently, tax to GDP ratio is 10 to 11%. You can see that all is not well. Nigeria is not even up to the average in Africa. That is 16-17%. I think that's why the reason why the president said, let's take it up to at least 18%. And for you to take tax to GDP ratio to 80%, you need to put some reforms in place. The reforms, as I have mentioned, will include harmonization of taxes to reduce the incidence of multiple taxation. It will include blocking loopholes that brings about leakages to make sure that there's more revenue collection, and also expanding the tax net to make sure that many people are paying the taxes. One of the major challenges we have in Nigeria is not looking at taxation of high net worth individuals. In the tax reforms, I expect them to bring in taxation of high net worth individuals. In Nigeria, you see somebody going to Maitama, say he bought a house 1 billion. I ask yourself, this person that bought this house 1 billion, how much has he paid in taxes? In Nigeria, you see somebody say he bought a car 500 million. This person that bought a car 500 million, how much has that person paid in taxes? In UK, 1% top taxpayers in US, 1% top taxpayers in US contribute to about 43% of all the taxes collected. In the United Kingdom today, 10% top taxpayers in UK contribute to over 60% of federal income tax collected. And these are countries that have looked into taxation of high net worth individuals. We also have so many taxes not being collected. Our law provided for capital gain tax. Are we really complying on it? How many people are paying capital gain tax in Nigeria? For example, if you go to so many places like Abuja and Lagos, properties are being bought and sold. Are we collecting capital gain tax on it? We have it in the law. Assuming that you bought a property 100 million and you sell it at 150 million, you have made a gain of what? 50 million naira. Our law says that you should pay 10% of the gain you have made, which is 5 million. Are we complying to it? So that is the reason why the president wants these tax reforms. Because the tax reforms, we try to minimize, harmonize the taxes, try as much as possible to reduce the multiplicity in the tax law and increase our tax to GDP ratio. Now we are operating in a contradiction. What I mean by contradiction is that Nigerians are complaining of multiple taxation, yet our tax to GDP ratio is low. So the reform is to solve two problems. One is to solve the problem of multiple taxation, and the other one is to take up our tax to GDP ratio to where it's supposed to be. I think that is the reason why the president has to bring the reforms. And we commend him for bringing the reform. Let us see how we can put up the necessary reform, not just the reforms in the tax, but also match it with our fiscal policy so that Nigeria will move to a productive path.
Okay, thank you so much there for opening this statement. Now, talking about expanding the tax net to generate revenue in Nigeria. Let's now join Sheikh Kamal Alkali, former Assistant Director, FIRS. We are glad to have you. If you can hear me. Okay, the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms is to, address this issue of expanding the tax net itself, but there are critical areas of concerns that Nigerians are worried about, and that is to develop the necessary solutions to address this concern. And the first one is the trust Nigerians need to understand and believe that the multiple taxations that they've been paying to so many organizations will, enhance development in the country, because most of them are saying we've paid so much money and there's nothing to show on ground. Let's have your comment on that, and how can these policies, impact the small businesses that are out there?
Thank you very much. The issue of reforming Nigerian tax system is a timely and welcome development. Mr. Sunday Okeo has spoken on the issue of the potentiality to generate more and more revenue than what is being generated now. This is possible only by reforming the Nigerian tax system. And when you mention the Nigerian tax system, you are talking of the Nigerian tax policy, Nigerian tax laws, and the tax administration. On the Nigerian tax policy, it is a policy that drives the other two that I mentioned. When you look at the Nigerian tax laws, you find that some of them have seen overstayed their welcome. The Stamp Duties Act, for instance, is still talking of charges of 20 kobo, 26 kobo. This is a 1930 act, and there is urgent need for real review. You still have in the Stamp Duties Act penalties of 200 naira, 100 naira, 40 naira, and in so many cases 20 naira. So we need to reform that. The other area is the area of allowances and reliefs and incentives. Some incentives have also been outdated. Government gives incentive to derive either employment or some other developmental issues. So if it is to derive employment, for instance, then it means there should be an evaluation mechanism that will ensure we are on track, that the aim is being achieved. If the aim is not achieved, it is either we review those incentives or we completely delete them from our tax laws. So you also have issue of tax administration, where you need to upgrade the capacity of the tax administrators for them to be at par with their colleagues anywhere in the world. You also need to develop their capacity to be able to tax digital transactions, where in the digital era you have e-commerce, and we need to be at that level to be able to tax those transactions. The Nigerian tax law, the Companies Income Tax Act, initially was talking of physical presence, then it moved to the issue of significant economic presence, but I think what we need more is the digital presence. We are losing a lot in terms of these digital transactions. There are a lot of tax leakages because the staff do not have the required capacity. Not only that, we also need to have the software packages that will be able to track those transactions. We thank God we have the tax promax in place. It is being developed. I hope the management of the Federal Revenue Service will continue to take input from the public so that they will develop that system to the level that it is supposed to be. Thank you.
All right, Sheikh Kamal Al-Khali, you are well suited to tell us about this because of your experience as a former assistant director FIRS. But I was just wondering, why steps have not been taken in the past, even when you were in the saddle, to address some of the obsolete tax laws that you mentioned, because if you are talking about 20 kobo, 20 naira, that is not, in tandem with today's developmental level of Nigeria. And some persons will also say, look, why is it that the National Assembly has not deemed it necessary, over the years to look into those obsolete laws, to address them, of course, to meet the current trends of events globally, and of course, in Nigeria. Now, let me return to the current FIRS man with us in the studio. Tax system in Nigeria is decentralized in such a way that various levels of government are responsible for taxes under their own jurisdiction. And sometimes when we talk about reform and harmonization, one wonders the direction the committee set up by government is going to take. Because of course, even in the FIRS, some of us have issues with the FIRS in terms of collection of taxes. For instance, there is FCT IRS, for instance. And if anybody in Abuja does business with the state government and the state government is supposed to pay some part of the tax to FIRS, then they will be more concerned about paying it to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, not FCT Inland Revenue Service. So explain to our viewers that demarcation between FIRS and IRS, or perhaps FCT and other states. Recall that when Governor Wike was in power, he took federal government to court. Discussing VAT, who takes VAT from states and so on. And if my memory is okay, he won the case as in court. Tell us more about that and other issues relating to multiple taxation that we have raised in this conversation.
All right, thank you so much. I think I'll take it from where my former colleague ends it. The tax system, when you talk of the tax system in Nigeria, it goes beyond the Federal Land Revenue Service. And like you have rightly said, we also have revenue administrations at each of the state government levels, including the FCT IRS, which superintend over the taxation of people who are residents of the Federal Capital Territory. So tax is not, is based on law. Whatever you say you want to collect, there must be a law to back it up. When you are collecting any amount of money, I won't call it a tax if there is no law to support it. And these are part of what the committee set up by the government is already talking about, that payments that are being received by non-state actors, where people are paying, but there is no law to support it. Some people will just come and collect whatever from you, but you who are paid, you will say they are taxes. What you are paid are not taxes. So all of those ones are part of what will be looked into. Now, to get back to your question on what then is the demarcation, it is the law that has put that demarcation. There are taxes collectible by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. There are taxes collected by the State Internal Revenue Services. There are taxes collected at the local government level. So each of these agencies have their own areas where they collect taxes. For example, when a company wants to pay tax, you want to pay in the name of the company. That is, the company now as a person recognized under the law is paying company income taxes. FRS has jurisdictions over that. Or if it is a petroleum operations, the companies who does petroleum operations, they also pay petroleum profit taxes. It is the FRS that has jurisdictions over that. So if you come to the taxation of individuals, and for people who are residents of the Federal Capital, maybe not until a few years ago when the FCT IRS came into being, it used to be the Federal Inland Revenue Service that collect taxes of the resident of the FCT. That is, when you are, as an employee, your pay is deducted, or you have made your business gains as an enterprise. You want to pay taxes on them, you come to the FRS then. But with the FCT IRS, which is the revenue agency of the FCT coming on board, the law has ceded the taxation of individuals, employees, and unregistered companies to the FCT IRS, save value-added tax. Because like I said, tax is based on law. The law that set up the value-added tax has given the right of collection to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. So, and when we collect, because at the FRS we are one, a tax agency for the Federation and also a tax agency for the federal government. There are two things. When you collect for the federal government, the taxes that are collectible on behalf of the federal government are exclusively for the federal government. When you collect for the Federation, you have collected for everybody. And that one goes into a bucket, and at the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission at periodic times, like monthly, that is what is being shared between or amongst the federal government, the state, and every other, and every local government, and every other agency was supposed to have a share of the pie. So the VAT that you mentioned, yes, there was a case. I am not aware that that case has been dispensed with. There were levels of judgment, and I know that the case is still on.
Multiple taxes, multiple judgment.
No, not multiple taxes.
Because we're discussing multiple taxes, but you're talking about
no, you
mentioned
different judgments. You mentioned the issue of VAT with the River State and another state, I think Lagos or so.
I'm just saying, the case is still pending.
The case has not been dispensed with.
Still in court.
The case is still in court, and that is why, as we speak, FRS is still the one collecting.
Do you see any complexity in all of this? Because what I've explained, for instance, in FCT, you said business enterprises, unregistered businesses, or individuals resident in FCT should pay to FCT IRS. That's what you say. What about companies, limited liability companies operating in Abuja? Who do they pay to? Is it to the Federal Revenue Service?
Every limited liability company, regardless of where you are in Nigeria, pay to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Yes. But if you have an unregistered business or a business or an enterprise, which is not a limited liability company, the law has said you fall within the jurisdiction of the state of your residence.
Exactly.
Where your business is located. That is why it has come within the purview of the FCT IRS. If that business were to be in Kaduna, it will go to the Kaduna State Inland Revenue Service. So in terms of the multiplicity, we have these are various agencies of respective government. And part of what may be the problem with the revenue of Nigeria, administration of Nigeria, is because we have these multiple agencies. So as a businessman or a businesswoman, for example, FRS will come to you, whether you are a registered business or not, and say you are supposed to be paying VAT. So FRS comes to you for VAT. If you are in the FCT, IRS come to you and say, where is the payee of your staff? The local government will also come and say, where is the tenement rate and all of those? You understand? But in some other crimes, all of these have been harmonized. For example, you must have been hearing of Her Majesty, what used to be Her Majesty Revenue and Custom, which is now His Majesty Revenue and Custom. So it is one single administration collecting the taxes. You understand? And we have it also in virtually all the West African countries, that will have a single administration. But our own law has said that you have the federal inland revenue, you have the state inland revenue. So it is not the creation of the FRS or any of the state agencies. It is the creation of the law.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring in Tajudi Adeboyega Akonde. He's the country managing partner, CEO of PKF Professional Services Nigeria. He's joining us via Zoom, I think, from Lagos. You've been listening to our guest here in the studios. My question is, there have been so many attempts by previous administration to reform the financial sector and taxation in Nigeria. And now there's a more intensive, approach to it. President Tinubu has even set up a committee, to look into that. Why does it feel so right this time around?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Of course, the management of the economy is a continuous process. Despite the fact that we have attempted some interventions in the past, for as long as we have not achieved our goals and our targets, the reform process will not stop. So what we can do at this moment is to see where are we in the journey to making our economy better, the fiscal policies to support sustainable development of our economy. So this must be the thinking of Mr. President in bringing together a group of experts to look at our fiscal policies, our tax system, and recommend to the new administration what needs to be done, what we need to tweak to ensure that we achieve our target of economic growth and sustainable development. We have had people talk about no tax revenue to GDP ratio. I've had people say the main problem of our economy is revenue, not just the diversity of revenue, but even the volume of revenue to sustain the economy, given the fact that the tax collection as a proportion of our annual budget in the last couple of years, the tax revenue has fallen below 50%. So in many economies, government finance public expenditure from tax collection. The problem with the economy is for a long time, we have oil revenue, and we seem to have over-dependent on the oil revenue, such that the lapses in our tax system, we seem not to have paid the attention it deserves over a long period of time. So if the new government feels the time is right for us to have a holistic look at our fiscal policy, at our monetary policy, at our economic development goals, and the strategies to achieve those goals, I think the best we can do is to support as best as we can.
All right, let me remain with you, Tajuddin Akonde, now that your Zoom connection is very clear. Fiscal policy is the the use of government spending and taxation to influence the economy. I want you to look at this holistically, to say, look, we have a committee now set up by government because the government wants to address the issue of multiple taxation as well as ensure that the tax net is expanded. Now, give us an idea what you think this committee should be focusing on, considering the fact that you are well knowledgeable of the situation in the past. And again, previous administrations have attempted to do this tax reform. They've also attempted to divert our economy from oil economy to other alternatives, as you pointed out. What should this committee be looking at this point in time to say it's time to change and let this change come and be sustained?
Thank you very much for that question. For me, two things. The very first thing I expect the committee to do is to have a very comprehensive look at the sources of leakages. Sometimes, in fact, I'm very certain that the issue with the tax revenue reported is not also about people evading tax. Even the ones which are supposed to be collecting, for those who are already within the tax base, the tax net, are we actually able to collect everything? Look, people have spoken so much about the issue of the tax revenue in Lagos State prior to 1999 being 600 million, and within a short period of time, it's grown to 20 billion, it's going to 30 billion and all that. That was not achieved simply by increasing taxes and all that alone. I am aware that what Lagos State did mostly was to deploy technology for revenue collection, harmonize, streamline what is supposed to come from various agencies in terms of the different taxes and levies, all being pulled into one basket, one purse, with the use of technology. Today, even if you drive a car in Lagos State, by the time you are due for renewal, you will get an alert that it is due on so date. If you register a car based on the value of that car, Lagos State is able to bring your tax record and check whether what you are paying aligns with the kind of asset that you are registering. So, to block the leakages, first, let's identify the sources of leakages in terms of areas we are not collecting, those we are collecting that is not ending, and that doesn't end in the treasury and all that. If we block the leakages without even introducing new taxes, the tax revenue is likely to go up. The second issue, area they need to look at is expanding the tax base. Today, a lot of people are outside the organized sector. Those who are paying are those who are already in the tax net, maybe employees, companies that are already registered. But our economy is substantially, large part of our economy is the informal sector. How do we capture what is going on in the informal sector and bring them into the tax bracket? So the committee has to come up with suggestions, creative ideas, that can bring those people within the tax bracket at a very minimal cost. Because for us as accountants, if you are bringing any policy, you need to look at the cost benefit. So in public policy analysis, we need to understand, the decision maker need to understand what is the psychology of the public, what has been the issue with tax compliance. Because if tax compliance is an issue, and you need to deploy a lot of resources to force people to comply, the cost of revenue collection may also eat deep into what you are collecting. So there must be reform, even that will affect the tax administrators, such that their engagement with taxpayers, their engagement with the public, the way they deploy the tools to do their work, will ensure that the taxpayers don't have the feeling of being harassed. If we can achieve voluntary compliance, we will have more revenue at a lower cost of collection. So these are the areas that I believe that the Reform Committee should look at. I am very confident that the chairman that Mr. President has appointed is very much conversant with these issues, because over a long period of time, he's been engaged with fiscal policies, tax reforms, both at some sort of committee level, even at the federal government, and as a practitioner that is well recognized in the industry. By the first thing they need to do is to engage with stakeholders. If you're going to carry out assignment like this, the first thing is don't assume you know anything. Engage with people, find out what is causing the situation we have now. Then they can go into their own brainstorming session and look at what is happening here, what can we do to tweak things to achieve what we want to achieve. So within the period that is allocated to them, we have to look at what is the resources that we have today in terms of revenue collection. Because substantially, it's revenue shortfall that is a problem. And when we mention this, the public shivers because they think there will be new taxes or so. To increase the tax revenue does not necessarily imply introducing new taxes. The ones we already have, let's see what we can do to achieve the collection. The issue of harmonizing tax collection is also key, it's part of this. When you have different agencies collecting, and each of the agencies will have their own cost structure, their own cost of collection. And ultimately, what is coming from FRS, from customs, from all the other agencies, immigration collecting fund, is expected to end up in the federal revenue account. Now,
okay, Mr.
Adeboyega, if we all continue.
Yes, we'll come to you on that as the conversation progresses, but we have to come back now to the studio where Dr. Kennedy Nwodu is seated. Dr. Kennedy, it's a known fact that because of our population, Nigeria has a huge potential of generating revenue. And in trying to address this multiple taxation, what can this new committee that the president has set up do?
Yeah, in addressing multiple taxation, the committee has to look at a way where at different levels of government, federal, state, and local, people can pay, possibly in the state, pay one tax there, harmonize it and pay tax there, possibly in the local government, harmonize it and pay tax there. And maybe at the federal level, can leave some taxes like company income tax, VAT, petroleum profit tax, and few taxes. At the end of the day, people will not feel the pulse of the fact that they are paying heavy taxes. I want to read out something for you. I have a client that I'm consulting in one state. He was given an assessment. In the assessment, he's paying payee, withholding tax on rent, withholding tax on professional fee, development levy, social services stabilization levy, business premises levy, sanitization waste disposal fee, signage, tourism, infrastructural levy, fire service levy, fumigation, pest and vector control, capitation fee, tenement rate, operational permit, radio and television licenses. They listed all of them. It's about 20-something levies. Now, these are levies coming from a state. The same client will face FIRS to pay VAT, to pay company income tax, to pay education tax, and other taxes. And not only that, there are also mandatory compliance like ITF, Industrial Training Fund, Nigeria, NSITF, and other regulatory compliances. So I think business people are feeling the pulse of these various multiplicity. The committee should find a way to harmonize it, where at federal level you pay few taxes like 3, 4, At the state, you can pay 1 or 2, and at the maybe local government, municipal, you can also pay 1.
Why can't the tax be harmonized?
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we have the Joint Tax Board. One of the primary purposes of setting up the Joint Tax Board is for this harmonization. I wouldn't say the Joint Tax Board has failed, but I would say that it has not been properly done at that level, because FIRS is the chairman of the Joint Tax Board, and the Joint Tax Board is made up of FIRS, 36 states, Revenue Service, and FCT IRS. So we expect at that level they can agree and harmonize their taxes. Like in Abuja now, the FCT IRS is working towards harmonization of these taxes and levies in FCT, but some people are kicking against it. Some local governments say, no, allow us to collect what we're supposed to collect. Because the businesses here are feeling the pulse. FIRS will come and go, FCT IRS will come and go, the municipals will come and go, then FCTA, the Federal Capital Territory Administration, will also come. So people were like, we are being disturbed. 4 sets of government agencies coming to us. But if we have a harmonized tax structure, you can find a way where you pay this tax. And so there are some countries, just like Mr. Kewu said, when you get to that country and start doing business, you pay one lump. It may be big. It may even be bigger than all these decentralized taxes. You pay one tax and you are free. And from that one tax, they know how to share it across the various levels of government.
Exactly.
They know how to share it. But here, we are not having such a thing. So this is exactly what we're expecting the committee to come up with. So that people will not feel this disturbance of facing one. Sometimes even some collect it in unorthodox means. You go on the road, people will put their nails and say, we have to collect this thing from local government. And at the end of some of those money being collected doesn't go to the government. So we're expecting the committee also to come up with a more way of collecting these taxes using technology. Because one of the things we are going to use to block the loopholes or the leakages is introducing technology. Let me give you an example. You go to some countries where you enter in a hotel or restaurant. As you are paying them, automatically the taxes are remitted straight to the government. You don't allow the owner of the hotel or eatery to collect the money, and at the end of the month, you decide how much will I even give FIRS when things are difficult. So we expect the committee to come up with a more robust way of not just harmonizing the tax structure, but also finding a way to bring in digitalization in tax collection. And I believe that's the only way we can move forward. The committee, for me, has a lot of work to do. Because beyond the harmonization of taxes, the committee has the mandate to expand our tax base, just as Mr. Tajudeen said. And in expanding our tax base, bring in people that are not paying this tax. So many of the big men in this country are not paying tax. I'm saying it. I hope the government will have the political will to make them pay taxes. Many big men in this country are not paying tax. If big men in Nigeria pay tax, we are going to get more than 18% tax to GDP ratio. It takes the political way, because one thing we have seen in this country is that policies come, implementation becomes a problem. So we're waiting for the committee to come up with their policies, the recommendation, and also we expect that the government will have the political will. This government has, been able to increase its revenue generation in Lagos, and I'm sure they can do it here. Have the political will. It doesn't care whether they are your friends or what. If you're my friend and you're not paying tax, you're not my friend. Pay your tax. You're a big man. So we expect the committee to also focus on taxation of high net worth individuals. There are so many estates in Abuja, so many properties. They are not paying tax. The committee should also look at property tax.
And all those abandoned buildings.
Exactly. So these are the things we expect the committee to do. And I'm sure you, if it is done, Nigeria will go beyond 18% tax to GDP ratio.
In fact, thank you, Dr. Kelly. You just hit it on the nail, because it things that we know that can be done. People don't pay tax.
People don't pay tax.
People don't pay tax. I met a Nigerian in Stockholm. He was driving a big car, and I told him, you must be doing well in this town, in this country, in Sweden, if you are doing this car. He told me that before he left, that he has gone to pay tax for using that car. He has gone already to pay. It's a digitized system. He went and paid it. To drive the car on that day, he paid tax for it. I saw the same thing in Indonesia. A senator was driving 550 ATL, this Mercedes. She told me that she paid tax to bring out the car for that day. A senator in Indonesia. So what we're doing here, like you said, estates all over the place. Nobody's paying tax. There are empty houses and everywhere. And one person could have 10 cars, 15 cars in this country. And he's not paying taxes on those cars and using those cars on even on bad roads or bad roads, as the case may be. So FIRS is indeed going to come in here. I will bring in Sheikh Kamal Al-Khali, who has a wide experience in all of this. You've listened to other guests raise a very important, points on this conversation. But let me just drop this before you now, you make your own comments on what they said. We have customs, we have immigration, we have JAMB, FIRS, state IRS. They're collecting taxes. I don't know, can this be harmonized, just as Dr. Kennedy said, in such a way that, look, if you must pay any tax from any point, the moment you pay, if you're a custom person, you're importing anywhere and you want to pay, the moment you pay, the one going to FIRS will go, the one going to some person will go immediately. JAM, for instance, has no business keeping fund. If you want to pay for JAM, you pay for JAM, and it goes to the national collection point automatically without JAM even seeing the money and so on. Can that be possible? If this committee is actually meant to effect a reform system in a tax regime, then what would you think they should focus on? Because you have been in tax business, so you understand what we're talking about. So let's hear from you, Sheikh Kamal Al-Khali.
Thank you very much. I want to assure you that this is very possible. It is done in other economies. It can be done in Nigeria. Even coming home, if you look at the issue of value-added tax, it is collected at the level of Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Sunday Okeo has already mentioned, but it is shared to the states and local governments. The Federal Inland Revenue Service takes 15% to defray the cost of collection, but the bulk of the money goes to the states and the local governments. So it can be done to other taxes too. But let me mention two things. One, we have not all mentioned is the issue of the reorientation of the mindset of the tax-paying public, both existing and potential taxpayers. Section 24, paragraph F of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria requires citizens to declare their incomes honestly and to the relevant tax authorities or revenue collecting agencies and pay their taxes promptly. Now, is it what we have now? People evade tax and they don't feel anything doing that. What we should do, the FIRS has started, is to catch them young. Let our young ones be up and doing in trying to comply with the provisions of the Section 24, paragraph F of the Nigerian Constitution. We can do this by catching them young. You still have in our jingles and especially in the nursery school rhymes, you still have songs like Old MacDonald has a farm. So what? Whether it is Old MacDonald or young. You still have fire on the mountain. Why are we teaching them fire on the mountain? Let it be nursery rhymes that instill in them the love of their nation and the knowledge and the responsibility to pay taxes. That is on one side. On the other side, in the Nigerian tax laws, I have spoken a little about incentives. You still have exemptions. Somebody mentioned the issue of value-added tax. I want to make it clear that the companies are not the ones bearing the burden of the value-added tax. They are only accredited agents of FIRs in the collection of that tax. It is the final consumer that is the actual payer of the tax. And that is why I want to mention, I do not understand why businesses below 25 million turnover threshold are exempted. In the Value Added Tax Act, what should be exempted is only the goods and services, the products. Individuals are zero-rated rather than exempted. But you have, through the Finance Act now, that those with turnover threshold below 25 million are exempted from the administration of value-added tax. This is a disincentive to growth. If I have a turnover threshold of 25 million or a perceived threshold of 25 million for the year, and I start to charge value-added tax, and my neighbor or my competitor that has turnover threshold of 24 million is not charging, nobody buys my product. They will all run to him. And if he knows by the time he crosses to that 25 million naira turnover threshold, he will start to pay VAT, he will refuse to grow to that 25 million. He will rather open another side business that is not even within the tax net. So I want to advise the committee to look into these issues critically and come up with recommendations to the government. Finally, I want to still go back to the issue of training. All this will not be possible unless and until you develop the capacity of those that are going to administer these laws. If you look at the cost of the training and you shy away from it, you will meet the cost of the leakages and it will be more. So I advise the committee to look into these things critically. Thank you very much.
Sheikh Kamal Alkali, thank you so much there. You've raised a lot of pertinent questions that our guests here in the studio will be able.
All right, now you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service, and we are having a discussion on tax reform in Nigeria. Of course, we have professionals here with us this morning who are, of course, doing justice to the topic. And now we return to Abuja studio and would like to engage the FRS, the serving FRS man with us here in the studio. And corruption is a major culprit in inefficiency, as witnessed in the tax system in Nigeria. We believe, quite frankly, many Nigerians do as well, that the FIRS came up with reforms in the past that has put you where you are right now in Nigeria in terms of credibility and the high level of functionality and the result-oriented FIRS. But then, people still believe that there are connivances with your operational men that often lead to the fact that big men don't pay taxes in the country. you speak to that, because there's a reason why big men don't pay. These are not, like Dr. Kennedy said, it's a high network of individuals. These are not hidden personalities. These are persons who run big-time businesses, across this nation, and they are well known. Yet, they don't pay tax, and when they pay, it is very minimal. It's not commensurate, with the business that they have. So what has corruption got to do in the system? We're going to address that. And another is the issue of, in trying to rejuvenate, the tax regime in Nigeria, what should government do to tackle the issue of likely abuse of tax holidays or exemptions, as the case may be?
All right, thank you. Two very good and quite important questions. Maybe I should start with the first one, which is talking about
corruption in the system.
Corruption in the system, and which we are trying to.
And why big men don't pay?
That big men don't pay taxes. Let me say that I think my colleague in the studio has also mentioned that high net worth people have not been paying taxes. Maybe from his own position as a representative of, as a tax advisor or tax practitioner, maybe I believe he might have information regarding that. But as a revenue officer, I will start from what I said previously, that each of the tax administrations have their own jurisdictions. As of today, the FRS doesn't collect personal income taxes from anybody other than those in the military. That is the law. So if you are a high net worth person, no tax will be paid to the FRS in your personal name. It is only your business, your company that you have established that we will deal with. So I do not have facts regarding whether high net worth people, whether they are paying or not paying. But one thing I also know is that, at the level of the state, who does this collection? During my postgraduate at the University of Lagos, it was a topic of interest to me, and I used Lagos State as a case study. My premonition was that, I'm going to find it so that nobody was running after them. But when I got to the Lagos State IRS, I found they have high net worth individual division or department. Who handles that? Is that applicable to other states of the Federation? I do not have the fact and will not be able to comment on that. But from that study, I found that, they are looking into the taxation of high net worth people. Whether they are not paying adequately or fairly, all of those, they will be the people who will be able to provide the data and the statistics. Yeah, on corruption, I think from the studio, or one of our guests also mentioned, I think guest online, was saying that we need to look at the amount of money that's supposed to come into the treasury. Was it actually coming in full? And when you are looking at the tax system in Nigeria, like we have established here, it goes beyond the Federal Land Revenue Service. Because since the service has gone beyond manual collection of taxes, we have a whole lot of respite. And what do I mean? Any taxpayer who is going to be paying whatever amount to the government, that money does not have to come to the service at all. It goes directly to the purse of the government, that is into the federal government account at the CBN, from where it is swept into where, if it is that is going to be shared and all of that amongst the 3 tiers of government, that is where it goes. So, but if you talk in terms of, people are under assessing, then it takes 2 to tango. How do we address that? There must be, before that software will thrive, there must be a willing taxpayer who does not want to pay the actual or the correct amount of tax, and an officer who also wants to compromise. So that is where the issue of educating ourselves on the need to be fair and just to the country comes in. Sheikh Kamal said that the Constitution has mandated you as an individual to declare your taxes fairly, truthfully, and honestly. That is an obligation to everybody, whether you are a high net individual or you are just a middle person. Middle class. So once that is done, then we are going to solve that problem headlong, and it's going to be a problem that everyone will have a part to play. If an officer is coming to you and you know you have declared your income fairly and accurately, then he has no business. You just call a bluff of him. It's just like if I'm driving and somebody, a law enforcement officer, stops me and says, "Where are your papers?" And my papers are correct. So what again do you want? So I believe that it is a problem that we must tackle, not only in the tax system, but across every of our sectors. I think...
you've addressed that issue. I think... let's bring in Tajuddin Adeboyega Okande, Country Managing Partner, CEO, PKF Professional Services. You've listened to what Mr. Sunday has said, and Sheikh also said that there's an issue of reorientation of the mindset of the taxpayers and also retraining of the tax administrators too. Let's have your take on that.
I want to say he is very correct in terms of training. If we are deploying, tax administrators need to be properly trained, because you need to know what you are expected to do and how you are expected to go about it to be able to deliver on that mandate. Tax administrators, the tax system is about laws. There are various tax laws. You apply those tax laws to arrive at the tax liability of any taxpayer and all that. And if the taxman himself is not well grounded in those laws, there will be issue, because most of the issue when it comes to taxation between the taxpayer on the one hand, the tax administrator on the other hand, and the tax advisors in the middle, interacting, being the bridge between the taxpayer and the tax administrator, is about interpreting the law. Apart from the technical aspects of the job, I want to say that the tax administrators, the tax officers, must all be properly trained in soft skill. The way you engage with people could make a difference between opening door and actually shutting the door. So all those must come into play. The objective must be that our interaction with taxpayers, whether we are just doing a compliance review, courtesy call, tax audit, and all that, must be in a way that the taxpayer himself is seeing you as partners in progress. This idea we need to reorientate ourselves, cut across everybody, even from the discussion here. I've heard a lot of, high net worth individuals are not paying and all that. Why I'm not saying yes, I'm not also saying no. But I think we should take the focus out of conversation that will make it look as if you're targeting people for being successful. If we look at taxpayers, some taxpayers or a group of taxpayers are not paying enough, what we need to do is to try to diagnose how they are able to go about it. For instance, there's what is called tax planning, because I had the FRS director there who says, even from my own record, it may not support that. It is true that Lagos State Internal Revenue Service has a whole department charged with dealing with high net worth individuals. Now, if we look at all those things, you might find on record that they are doing something, but they may not be paying exactly what you expect, what you assume they should be paying. Because the thing with high net worth individuals is they also have the resources to engage experts, tax practitioners, lawyers, who are able to look at these tax laws and take advantage of borderline issues in the area of tax planning. Take, for instance, a typical high net worth individual who owns businesses. His income will be coming from maybe dividend received from that on the enterprise. Now, at the entity level, the profit has been taxed maybe 30%, 32 plus education tax and all that. The post-tax profit, if you take dividend out of it, the dividend is subject to 10% withholding tax. And according to our law, the withholding tax on dividend is final tax. Now, a number of these big men have organized their affairs in such a way that the bulk of what is coming to them is dividend income or tax-free income, which is they can defend by law. So we need to look at how are they going about all this and see areas where there is too much latitude to maneuver. So that part of the reform is also to look at those tax laws and see where we need to close or reduce the width of the lane, so that the issue is not just accusation and all that. We are looking at supporting everything we are doing with data. Now, if we take that,
well. All right, Adeboyega, we are not, cutting you short. We're trying to manage the time left for us to conclude this conversation. So we are returning to the studio to engage Dr. Kennedy Iwundu on a particular item here. You know, government use fiscal policy to promote strong and sustainable growth and reduce poverty. But that cannot happen in a situation where you have an epileptic tax collection system, a system that is so complex that people now begin to have doubt or cast doubts as to what is happening. Now we have tax holidays and tax exemptions, which of course primarily used to either woo foreign investors or local investors who are willing to, engage in some sectors of the national economy. Now, how have we used these two important key items, tax holidays and taxes? We've had that too in the last administration. I don't know how far that has gone and how it is contributing to tax regime system.
Okay, tax exemptions, especially tax holidays, has been a tool used by the government to bring investors into the country, because you need investors. You need those that will invest in the productive activities of the country, especially somebody that is going into something new, innovation. Not you are going into what everybody is doing. The idea of tax holidays or tax exemption is that you are going into a new thing. And what they are going into is highly capital intensive, that you need a lot of time to recoup your money and you're going to create job. So that's why government brings these tax holidays or tax exemptions, so that within a period of 3 years or 5 years, you'll be able to recoup some of the investment you have made, especially in the area of bringing in new innovation to the country. Government has been using it to bring investment to the economy. However, sometimes we have allegation of abuse of those tax holidays. Well, I don't know the extent of abuse because I'm not into the Nigerian Investment Promotion Agency that grants those tax holidays to know how they have abused it. Also, what we also have heard about abuse is in tax waivers. We also have that at some point we have abuse in tax waivers.
But let me ask you this. I want you to explain this to our viewers because of what we have with respect to MTN government deal. The road leading to Enugu to Onitsha, for instance, they say it's being done by MTN. And it's a tax something. What is it?
There's a time we have the government, the president gave executive order on tax road infrastructure, meaning that as a company, you can construct a road, or invest into a road construction, so that during the time you are paying tax, it will be taken into consideration. So Dangote did the same thing, MTA did the same thing, and then PC. So, and I think that is exactly what we want, because we want a situation where we see the money we are paying tax, what is being used in infrastructure. And when you put into infrastructure, it creates economic advantage, economic growth. so that people
will begin to believe in government. Believing that government is now utilizing
exactly. People believe that government is utilizing because they say the tax being paid, being used in constructing road, tax being paid, giving us steady power supply, and it also promotes economic development because people will now, businesses will now spring up, and it will help in raising our tax to GDP ratio.
Okay, Dr. Kennedy, Mr. Sunday, on the closing, in 30 seconds, in the next 1 year, where do you see the tax regime?
Oh, thank you. I think with what the executive has set in motion, I see the tax regime of Nigeria moving from where it is presently to another height. We have left Egypt. We are not yet at the promised land.
Okay.
And that is why when he asks, but we have been doing reform before. The first set of reform took us away from Egypt. So now we are still in transit. We want to reach the promised land. Maybe this will take us across the wilderness or across the Red Sea and all of that. Then on the incentive, because I think he also asked me, you know, gone are the days where everybody begin to embark on what is regarded as the race to bottom in order to attract investors. You know, now we must streamline our incentives. Because somebody who is coming to invest in your country is looking for, will I get market? Will I be able to make a profit?
Okay.
So once you have made a profit, then you should pay your taxes. And our word to Nigerians, let's support this committee and let us pay our taxes regularly. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sunday Okeo, Director Tax Policy Department, Federal Inland Revenue Service. Thank you so much for your input into the conversation.
Thank you.
Dr. Kennedy Nwodu, Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District, a regular on the program. We thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Sheikh Kamal Al-Ghali, former Assistant Director, FIRS, who joined us from Kano. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. And Tajuddin Adeboyega Akonde, Country Managing Partner, CEO, PKF Professional Services Nigeria. We appreciate your insight into the discussion. And for news making the rounds in the globe, now over to our foreign decks.